Hi, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We will start the session in 2 minutes so that we can allow for time for all to settle in, yeah? All right. So most of the crowd has already started to come in. So good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you present today. I am Audrey, the Associate Director with Global Migration Solutions. So it feels like 2021 just started, but before we know it, we are already in the final month of 2021, and we are wrapping up our webinar for the year with a special highlight. Today, we are honoured to have Leo Yu from the Western Australian State Government to share with us the most up-to-date information on the business and investment migration visa pathways available in Western Australia. WA's economy has recovered from the initial impact of COVID-19 with strong support from the mining industry. The Western Australia's labour market actually continues to strengthen with the increased economic activity, and the unemployment rate is at 4.1%, which is in fact the lowest since September 2013. Retail trade has a new record in August 2021, construction activities being in demand, and a healthy ongoing international trades. Among our clients, Western Australia has been and continues to be the top choice, not only because Perth is a crowd favorite generally, but this is also possible because of the program is very friendly and encouraging with a lower entry requirement of business assets compared to other states. So I'm also happy to share that majority of our business and investment visas to Australia are successfully supported by the nomination from Western Australian government. The support from the government given to us is also great. We have a great synergy working with Leo and his team. So Leo, it is great having you here again, and many thanks for all the support given. So Leo, can I welcome you to say hi?
Thank you, Audrey. Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hi, Leo. Wonderful to have you again today. So next will be the speakers for today. Okay. So Desmond Ang. So Desmond is the Managing Director and founder of Global Migration Solutions. He's a licensed migration agent for Australia and New Zealand. So Desmond has 20 years of experience in migration. He's also won multiple awards and the latest award that he's won is the top 25 Global Migration Agency CEO. Next, please. The next speaker is James Allen Hall. Oh, James, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Desmond, can I also get you to say hi? I forgot to ask you to. Well,
hi, everyone. Yeah, pleasure and meeting all of you again. And thank you for joining us.
Okay. So James is also a registered migration agent for Australia and New Zealand. James is in fact a senior agent now, and he's a certified trainer for migration advisors. He actually provides CPD courses for all other migration agents. James, would you like to say hi?
Yep, nice to meet everyone.
Right. So moving on to the agenda for today, we will be covering a few important topics. The session will start with James covering the requirements of all the various 188 business and investment visas available, options which are suitable for current business owners who wish to run a business in Australia, or if you just purely wish to invest in funds. We will also cover briefly on 188E entrepreneur visa, which is quite talked about now for those who are able to demonstrate exceptional and innovative business ideas for Australia, that would lead the commercialization to a product or service in Australia, or the development of an enterprise or business in Australia. The highlight is you do not need to be a current business owner for this. Then Desmond would later talk about the how to convert the temporary residence 188 visa to a full PR. And he would also share on the migration scene during pandemic based on his own experience on why clients still choose to proceed with the migration and the pull factors as well. Leo will then share about the overview of WA and its program benefits, including the support for migrants. Interestingly, do note that WA also provides an avenue for those above 55 years of age through an age waiver arrangement to apply for the 188 visa. So I trust this is going to be a beneficial session for all of you. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where we welcome any questions and encourage you to speak to us for your migration needs. So before I begin the session, just allow me to quickly share about the company background. So Global Migration and ANZ Migrate. So Global Migration is based in Jalan, Razak, Kuala Lumpur. ANZ Migrate is in Singapore. And we carry ourselves as a premier migration advisory firm with actually now we've just hit 17 years of experience in the industry, and we've helped more than 12,000 families migrate to Australia. We have 5 offices across Asia Pacific, which is in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. We've also won multiple awards, latest being the Top 25 Global Migration CEO Award. These are the programs that we carry. So we are the pioneers for Australia and New Zealand migration. And we also provide services for investment migration to Portugal, US, and Canada. So here's just a look of the awards that we've won. So ANZ Migrate won the Top 25 Immigration Company. And this is Desmond with his award of the, it was a top, which is currently, he's a Top 25 Agent Award. All right, so I've done with the introduction. I won't take so much of the time. I'm going to pass it on to James for you to take over, James. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you. Good to, well, I was going to say good to see everyone, but I can't see you. But it's good to be here with you. So Australia has a very popular business and investment migration program. The current program has been in place since 2012, and we have seen changes to this program over the years. There's been changes in 2015, and more significantly, we've also seen some recent changes to lift up the requirements, the entry requirements for some of these pathways. Globally, I should point out that in the last few years, Australia has actually overtaken the US as being the #1 preferred destination for high net wealth individuals. And these are people with US $1 million or more. In previous years, the US was a preferred destination, but the last probably about 4 years, Australia has become the #1 preferred destination globally. And that's because of factors like the healthcare, the benefits they get, safety, things like inheritance tax or lack of inheritance tax, I should say. So a lot of reasons there, and Desmond will cover some of these reasons later. So I'll explain about some of the pathways that are available under the investment and business program. Now, we've got 4 main streams that we deal with under this, which cover a range of business, investment, and entrepreneur options. And they have different amounts that are required in terms of the investment that is required either in investment solutions or in business activities in Australia. So we'll actually go through these. The first one we'll talk about is the business innovation stream. Now, the name's a little bit confusing because there's nothing about innovation here. It is purely a business owner stream. So it's designed for people that have a history of owning and managing a business first. You need to show that you've been managing and owning a business for at least 2 complete fiscal years recently to actually qualify for this. You need to also show that you've got a minimum shareholding in that business previously of at least 30% for a private company. It can be 10% if it's a publicly listed company. Also, the company needs to demonstrate historical turnover, again, for at least 2 fiscal years of hitting the equivalent of 750K Australian dollars. So this could be a business in Australia, it could be a business overseas, but you need to show the equivalent turnover or revenue of around 750K Australian dollars equivalent in any 2 of the last 4 fiscal years.
James, sorry to interrupt you, James. Do you mind speaking louder? It's a bit faint.
Yeah, sure. Let me just, I'll just adjust my volume as well. That might
Thank
help.
you.
Okay, is that better? Is that better?
Still not too good.
Okay, what about this? I'll just talk louder.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
No problem. Okay, so we talked about the turnover requirements. Remember, this is historical, so we need to show that for the business that has already been owned and managed. In addition, there is an asset requirement, and this can include assets that are personal as well as business assets, and these need to add up to the equivalent of 1.25 million Australian dollars. These also have to be assets that are capable of being moved to Australia if required. Now, you don't have to move them, but we need to show that the possibility is there. So you can't use funds, for example, in your EPF or your retirement funds that are locked away, but you can use property, you can use bank accounts, you can use shares, other assets that could be liquidated if required. But as I said, you don't have to liquidate them. You need to show that they are available if they were required to be used. Now, the actual amount you need to put into Australia for the business activities in Australia do vary. They do vary by state. States have different requirements on what they expect in terms of the amount of money that's going to be put into the business in Australia. I might just take a quick step back because there's one thing I forgot to mention, which is this whole program is a two-stage program. And the first stage is a temporary visa known as the 188, which allows the person to go to Australia, engage in business or investment activities. And through these activities in Australia, they can then qualify for the permanent residence stage under the 888. So that's the principle behind this. And what we're talking about here are those entry requirements to get into Australia and then live in Australia under the 188 visa. And as I said, you would meet the requirements for PR through running business or investment activity in Australia while you're on that 188 visa. The next stream we're going to look at is the entrepreneur stream. Now, the entrepreneur stream is relatively new. It was added around October 2016. And the idea is to give entrepreneurs a pathway to Australia. Now, all of the other pathways, like the investor, like the business innovation or the business owner, require the person to have pre-qualifying requirements. So they need experience running a business or managing investments in their history. With this pathway, it's for entrepreneurs. So it's based around the entrepreneurial idea that you have to carry out in Australia. So it doesn't have any mandatory requirements for previous business ownership or management experience or investment experience. It is largely based around the person having a good, innovative idea to carry out commercialization and could also be development of products and services in Australia, or to do a startup business activity in Australia. The business can't be an existing business. So any business activity must be a startup business in Australia. Now, we've seen a positive change under this program because prior to the 1st of July this year, any applicants for the entrepreneur stream had to engage with typically a venture capital partner to get venture capital funding to support their activities under the entrepreneur stream. That requirement is being removed as of the 1st of July, and that's being replaced with a more involved process working with the state or territory government that's going to support this application, for example, Western Australia. And typically they will require or expect some sort of involvement with industry partners, such as incubators or accelerators that will work up with startups to help them build and develop their idea. So this is a very interesting pathway. It's still, even though it started in 2016, I would say it's still in the early stages. And with the change that's happened on the 1st of July to remove the capital funding requirement, this is going to take off, I think, in a much larger way than it has so far. The next streams we'll look at will be the investment pathways. Now, we actually have two streams available for investments. We have a lower pathway and a higher pathway. So the lower pathway is based around a $2.5 million investment, and the higher pathway is based around a $5 million investment. Now, the key difference between these is that the 2.5 million can only come from specific sources, and they are business or investment activities that have been conducted by the applicant. So there are much tighter requirements in terms of the experience and the source of funds for the 2.5 million. For the 5 million, we just need to show that it's been legally obtained. And that can be through inheritance, it can be through gifted funds. It's quite common, for example, we have an applicant that doesn't have 5 million and their parents provide additional funds to them as a gift to help them reach that 5 million level. That's very common and that's acceptable for this. So we just need to show that money has been legally obtained. It doesn't have to come from any specific source. And for the 5 million pathway, we don't need to show that the funds the applicant has got specific experience in management or investment or business activity. These are not required. The other thing to be aware of with both of these is the form of investment in Australia is fixed. You can't just put it in property or anything else that you choose to. You must invest in a commercial fund structure, which involves 3 different types of funds. 20% goes into a venture capital fund, 30% goes into an emerging business fund, which is based around a share fund on the Australian Stock Exchange, with companies that were below 500 million market capitalization when they entered the stock market. So these are regarded as being emerging companies. To me, 500 mil is a lot of money, but these are still considered to be on the smaller side. So it's a share fund for the 30%, and the remaining 50% is in what we call a balancing fund. And generally, our clients will have choices within that balancing fund to choose how that fund invests. Whereas with the venture capital and the emerging business, they tend to buy units in an existing fund. Now, the other thing that differentiates these 2 pathways is the stay requirements in Australia. And by investing the 5 million, the stay requirements in Australia are greatly reduced. And it comes down to 40 days worth of stay for each year of the visa. Whereas with the 2.5 million, the stay requirement is much higher and it's 2 years residence in Australia. So there's 2 years residence required for that. So a significant difference there. The other thing I should also mention, it's not on the slide, is, and Audrey did touch upon it, there are age limits for these pathways, and generally applicants need to be under 55 years of age. The primary applicant would need to be under 55 years of age. That doesn't apply to the $5 million pathway. There is no age limit to that. However, it is possible in some circumstances to get waivers of the age through negotiation with the nominating state or territory region in Australia. And with their support and meeting any requirements they have, it can be possible to get a waiver for that age. And Western Australia tends to be the most receptive state in terms of that flexibility. In terms of the processing timeframe, there's been some big changes in this area. When we looked at the queues last year, we had around 32,000 applications in the queue for business and investor visas. That's not us as a company, but the whole program. So very, very large numbers. And typically the number of grants that can be made each year are around 7,000. So there is a quota for the grants of this visa, and that's around 7,000 per year. But one interesting thing the Australian government has done during the pandemic is they have actually doubled the number of places for this program. So we now have 13,500 places, both in the last program year and in the current program year. So the government's put a lot of faith in this program during the pandemic period, and they see this as a very important program to help Australia recover from the economic impact of the pandemic situation. The processing of these visas has continued during the pandemic period. It hasn't been halted or suspended in any way. So these are very positive outcomes for this program. Despite the large number of applications in the queue last year, we are seeing improvements in the processing time. Now, a few years ago, it was quite fast. It did slow down a bit as the numbers of applications are being increasing. We are seeing some signs now that it is starting to improve. So to give you an idea of the kind of expected time frame for this and the key steps involved, the first stage would be doing a review of the client's eligibility, making sure they can meet all of the criteria, particularly financial and business criteria. We'll go with the assumption, based upon step 1 on the slide, that they would be starting this month in December 2021. Once we've checked everything's okay, we can then go ahead and lodge what's called an expression of interest. And this is the way that the individual lets Australia know that they want to apply for one of these business or investor visas. their information is put into a computer system on the Australia side, and the state and territory governments can look at this system, and we look to one of those state or territory governments to support the application through what's called a nomination. And that's done through an application to that state or territory for a nomination application. And that's where the state or territory says, we like this person, we support their business or investment ideas and plans in Australia. And it's a necessary approval to have for this program or to go through this program. Once we've got that nomination approval, that will generate an invitation from the expression of interest system called the skill select system, and that's step 4. Once we've got that, we can then go ahead with the visa application. So again, the approval from a state or territory government, such as Western Australia, is critical to getting that approval to be able to make the visa application. If you don't have that approval, you can't go ahead and make a visa application. So given this timeframe we're following, we'd be making that application around March next year, based upon starting the process in December. And we would then expect a processing time probably around a year and a half. It can vary a little bit. It might be a bit faster, might be a bit slower. I should also mention some of the pathways do get priority. For example, if you're doing the 5 million significant investor visa, we can be looking at a processing time of a few months for the actual visa itself. And also if you hold a Hong Kong SAR or BNO passport, you'll also get priority processing of your actual application as well. During that processing, we'll need to get the applicants to complete medical checks and police checks. For the medical checks, you don't have to be in perfect health, but we require a reasonable level of health. And the reason for this simply is that the Australian government provides subsidised healthcare to applicants in Australia holding permanent residency. And because this is a pathway to permanent residency, they want to make sure that any applicants for this process, even for the first step, are not going to be a significant burden on the healthcare system in Australia. Now, you don't need perfect health. Minor conditions are generally okay. We have clients that go through with hepatitis. We've had clients with diabetes. We've had clients recovering from cancer. So it will depend upon the situation. Perfect health is not required. But we will need to have a medical examination, physical checks done as part of this process. Police checks, also there's a bit of flexibility there. We'll need to get criminal history checks done for any country the person's been living in for 12 months or more in the last 10 years. We're not looking for a perfect record. So we're looking for any significant criminal history, and that generally is going to be a criminal charge where the person was sentenced to 12 months or more imprisonment. So the important thing here is if there are any concerns on the health or the character side, talk to us. It doesn't necessarily rule you out, and we'll be able to give you advice on whether or not this is going to be an issue for the process. If you are doing an investment pathway, you'll need to make that investment, either the 2.5 million or the 5 million, before the visa can be granted. If you're doing the business pathway or entrepreneur, there's no further steps required. You'll be able to do those after the visa has been granted. And once these are all cleared, the visa will then be granted and you'll be able to travel to Australia as a temporary resident in Australia and start engaging in those activities in Australia and be on your pathway to getting permanent residency. So I'll hand over to Desmond, who will talk about some of the benefits and later stages on this pathway.
Thank you, James. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again, and nice to have all of you with us today. So James spoke about the programs that bring you to Australia. I'm going to continue to share with you on what does it take for you to convert yourself from temporary resident status to the permanent resident status in Australia. In other words, I'll be talking about what you need to commit yourself in Australia. Yeah, well, first of all, the 188 visa basically offer all of you a temporary residence status, and being a temporary residence visa holder, that gives you and your family members the rights to live, work, and study in Australia. And so with the TR status or a temporary residence status, if your children are in a primary or secondary school, then you'll be able to enjoy the same benefits just as a PR or citizens. Importantly, that status, being a TR holder, that doesn't constrain you to or doesn't limit you to buy property such as a new developed property. So basically, you are allowed to buy any types of property, including the subsidies or old property, should that be your first home. Yeah. And how does it take for you to go from TR to PR? I will share with you shortly. But what to highlight to you over here is you have 3 years. You could basically convert into a PR as fast as after the 3rd year. So being a PR, your benefits will continue to be expanded to cover the tertiary education as well. For example, you're paying only 30% of what you need to pay if as compared to those international students without a PR status. So that PR status do also includes a Medicare. It covers you and your family member under the Australian healthcare system, and we call that Medicare. And beside the Medicare, and you and your family member do also access to all other social security benefits. Now, allow me to share with you what is the market and the migration scene like over the last 2 years. Despite the pandemic, our experience is, there's going to the demand for the programs continues to increase. We have seen clients who need to apply for this visa because this is the visa, the 188, do get a privilege to be able to travel to Australia just as a PR and citizens. Whereas, as you know, many other visa programs doesn't allow the visa holder to travel during these periods of times. So whereas 188 has that travel exemption, and it is a privilege for a visa holder of 188 to be able to travel during these times without any restrictions. Also, we have seen clients who need to apply under 188 simply because they want to be able to bring their children over to Australia to study. As you know, many international students in the past were having some difficulties to return back to Australia to continue their study. And we have also seen clients who continue to need to set up business in Australia, to set up the business in Australia for the purpose of expanding their business and taking Australia as one of the base to develop their overseas business. So these are the many reasons why the 188 visa or the business investment programs continue to be demanded for, among our clients. Okay, now I'm going to share with you what does it take for you to convert yourself into the PR when you're in Australia. So James talked about 188, while I'm going to share with you on what, on the requirements of the 888. Now, what I would like to highlight over here is the Australian government doesn't set the bar or the requirements extremely high, and for that to set a challenge for you to go through the PR conversion. Relatively, if you look at the requirements are achievable, and it is very realistic for you to be able to make it through from TR to PR. Now, if you are going through the 188, the business innovation pathway, the visa will require you to run the business for at least 2 years while you're in Australia. And besides the running the business for 2 years, you are required to hold at least 30% of the share in Australia. So you're allowed to set up a brand new company, you're allowed to take over an existing company, or even you're allowed to join somebody who is already running a business, and you're taking up at least 30% of the share. Yeah, what I'm going to highlight over here, what I would like to mention and emphasize here is you must be involved in the business actively. Yeah, some of you might be thinking that, hey, what about, I just invest, but I leave the business to somebody else to manage it, or I leave to other business owner to handle it. That is not the intent of this visa. Yeah, you need to manage the business and involve in managing the company. During these 2 years of the business operation, you yourself or your spouse, one of you are required to spend at least 1 out of the 2 years. And we call role swap. For example, if let's say your spouse, who is the 188 visa holder, who decided that he or she is not fit to stay in Australia, to manage this business for 2 years, you could actually have your spouse to manage that on your behalf. So we call that role swap. Now, beside the first 3 conditions, there's also a condition on the turnover. During the 2 years, the second year turnover should have at least 300,000. That work out to be 25,000 per month. And this is the requirements on the second year. So there isn't any requirements on the first year, a minimum turnover on the first year, but yes, on the second year. Now, when it comes to the 5, 6, and 7, do take notes that you could actually choose any 2 to fulfill. You're not required to fulfill all the 5, 6, and 7, all 3 conditions, but rather you only need to pick at least 2 to fulfill. And the first condition for you to fulfill is 2 staff. You can choose to employ 2 staff on the second year. So effectively from month 13 until the month 24th. Yeah, so you need to employ minimum 2 staff, or you can choose to employ 2 staff. Should you decide not to employ 2 full-time staff, which is non-family member, and you could choose to maintain 600,000 of total assets in Australia. So if you're going through Western Australia, so this 600,000 of assets to be maintained through, in Western Australia, and that consists of both business asset as well as the personal assets. And the last condition is the business asset of 200,000. Do take note, this 200,000 is already part of the 600,000 here. So we are looking at basically a total of 600,000, where at least 200,000 is the business asset and the remaining 400,000 being a personal assets. So you only need to meet at least 2 out of the 3 from 5, 6, or 7. So that summarizes what does it take for you to meet the PR condition when you apply for the AA8A. And again, you can convert your PR or apply for the AA8 right after 3rd year. So you have the first 3 years to fulfill this requirement. But if you need more time to move yourself and set up the business in Australia, you could actually delay these requirements until year 4 and year 5 and convert that before the end of the 188A visa expired. Okay, but of course this visa also comes with the extension, and I will talk about that if you have a question on that. Now, next, let's look at what does it take for you to convert into a PR. If you're under the 188B, relatively it is much straightforward. This is not a business migration. This is not a business innovation programs. Rather, this is an investment programs which require you to invest 2.5 million into the compliant investment. You must maintain your investment throughout the whole periods until your PR is obtained. Yeah, and other than that, you're not required to set up the business per se, but it is encouraged. If you wish to set up your business, you're more welcome to do that. You have the rights to do so as well. And during the 5 years, you need to stay at least 2 years cumulatively. So again, that is between husband and wife. Do take notes, the 2 years is not a combination of husband and wife, but it is from one of you. All right. Let's look into the significant investment visa that require you to invest 5 million. So again, it's the same requirements. You are required to maintain the 5 million of investment throughout the whole periods until the PR is obtained. And generally, we are talking about 3 years plus the processing time until your PR is granted. And during these periods of times, the first 3 years, for example, if you choose to convert into the PR, so you are spending 40 days per year, each year for the first 3 years. And when you're converting into the PR, after the PR is obtained, then it is a whole separate set of requirements to maintain the PR. There is no strict requirements for you to continue to maintain the investment for 5 million into the compliant investment. You could decide on how you wanted to continue to manage your investment and to invest your money. You can move and invest your money into the property. You could continue to just leave the money and invest into some forms of low risk investments such as bonds, for example, if you like to do so. And it is all at your own discretion right after you have obtained the PR. So So by now, you have seen what does it take for you to apply for the first stage of the 188 visa to be in Australia. And we have also covered what does it take for you to fulfill when you are in Australia to become a PR holder. Yeah, and we have shared about your entitlement as a TR holder as well as a PR holder. So that kind of give you an idea. I hope that gives you an idea on how these programs serve you and your family member and helps to helps you and your family member to achieve what you need to be, in Australia. All right, and I'm going to pass over to Leo Yu. Let's welcome Leo to share with you Western Australia and why is it that Western Australia is popular among the migrants. Leo, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Desmond. Let me share the screen. All right. Beautiful. Thank you, James and Desmond, for your great introduction to the new program. My name is Leo Yu. I work for the Western Australia government, looks after the state nomination part of the whole business and investment migration program. As many of you heard about, from 1st of July 2021, the new, or we call it a streamlined business innovation and investment program has been introduced by the Home Affairs, which also the Immigration Department, which literally reduced the number of available business and investor visas to only 4, which James and Desmond both have gone through the details. Today, I'm going to talk about Perth in Western Australia and also our state nomination criteria for this new program. A little disclaimer for all the presentation. Pretty much, we're a government agency. We don't refer or endorse any third-party service providers. All the information we provided today is just as current. So yeah, make sure to do your due diligence before you pick any service providers for your migration or investment. So where is Perth? Perth is the capital city of Western Australia. Okay. For most of you in KL, right? We are in the same time zone. So at the moment it's 3:45 in the afternoon on a Thursday. We have the same time zone, and then it's easy for us to fly to KL, 4 hours flight from KL by Mars, and for all the passengers, all the migrants coming from Singapore and Malaysia in that region, it's very easy for you to communicate back home with your family or business at home, okay, even after you migrate to Western Australia. So, and we are the only state that share with you the same time zone throughout the year. So if you come to Western Australia, you don't have to change your clock. Okay, and same as us. If we travel to KL or Singapore, we never need to adjust our clock. Okay, so that's geographically, we are in a very good location and very close to where you are. In terms of livability, that's something you're concerned. Perth has been ranked one of the top 10 most livable cities in the world for the last 17 years. Recently, we were ranked number 6 in the world. Despite the global pandemic, we're doing pretty good. Number 6, the 6th most livable city in the world. However, personally, I think we should be the top 1 or 2. But anyway, we were pretty good about managing the pandemic, COVID-19. As you probably heard from the news, Perth was probably one of the cities in the world that experienced the shortest number of or lowest number of days in lockdown in the last nearly 2 years. So it's a very livable city, good environment, and it's good place to run a business, to raise your family, to expand your business as well. To many families from Malaysia or Singapore or Asia, education is one of the biggest concerns for the children, and it could be one of the reasons that you wanted to migrate to Australia. In Western Australia, our government is very kind to offer you the free education for your kid from kindergarten to up to year 12 at local government school, public schools. But if you want to go to private school, you can still go and just pay the fee as a local. And we got plenty of universities for your kids to choose from. All good universities, world-class universities, providing you a range of degrees for your children to study, and also different pathways. Because in Australia, we not just have the university pathway, we also have TAFE, which is the vocational pathway. It's getting really popular for some of the young kids. All right. James talked about already about the application process. So at the moment, if you wanted to apply one of the visa, so if you wanted to do the business migration program for Australia, you don't have many choices, because there are only 4 visas available. Okay. Being the only one business visa, okay, business visa is 188A, business innovation, with 2 investor visa, for 188B, and significant investor visa for 188C. And with a new upgraded entrepreneur visa 188E, okay, you only have 4 temporary visa to apply if you want to migrate to Australia for business and investor visa. Okay, once you qualified for any of the visa, okay, and who can do the qualification? A registered Australian migration agent. Okay, they have the MARA registration number. They can be verified on the government website, mara.org.au. And apparently here we got Desmond and James, the both are registered migration agents on that aspect. So once they've done the assessment about your business, your assets, your experience back home, then you got option. Okay, okay, where to go? Do you want to come to Western Australia, or do you want to come to Melbourne or Sydney? Okay, you have to pick a city or a state. Okay, and then you need to apply for state nomination. That's the first step in the whole process. Okay, and this is and you can't bypass this step. Okay, you need a state nomination. Okay, so let's say you wanted to come to Perth, and then you apply state nomination to our office. The current processing time for state nomination from Western Australia is roughly, it's up to 4 weeks. Okay, give or take. If your application is straightforward, no additional information is required, and no additional paperwork needed, then we're likely to just approve it within a couple of weeks' time. Okay. Once we approve it and we send you the agreement, which you need to sign and return back to us, we'll send the invitation. Okay, the invitation to apply, ITA. So you cannot apply any of the 188 visa without state or territories invitation. Okay, once you receive the invitation, you only have 60 days. Okay, 60 calendar days, not business days. 60 calendar days to lodge your application to the Department of Home Affairs, okay, to the Federal Immigration Department, okay. And Currently, the processing time roughly is about 24 to 29 months, but we do see it's getting faster. Okay, the situation is improving, and hopefully by next year, we'll see it drop to within the 24 months, and slowly within 18 months, slowly within 15 months, 12 months, and ideally we want to get it down to about 9 to 12 months. Okay, that's the the ideal processing time for the visa. But we're looking pretty good forward, because we have plenty of quota. This year we got to double the quota for the business and the investor visa, 13,500. And next year it's likely will remain the same. So at the same time, the immigration department is clearing up all the backlogs. So hopefully the processing time at their end will reduce to an ideal time frame. Okay. All right. For the full temporary visa, okay, the first one is the 188A, the business innovation. This is the only visa allows you to do business and to qualify for PR after you meet all the requirements. Okay. This time, Western Australian government, we did not add any extra requirement on top of the Home Affairs basic rules, and there are no minimum or maximum state nomination criteria or requirements that you need to propose. But what we are looking for is a detailed budget in the business proposal from you to demonstrate us, how your investments will bring economic contribution to our state, to job creation, etc. Okay, so it has to be a realistic, viable proposal, something that can be achieved. All right, so there's no minimum, there's no maximum. You can say, I want to start a little cafe around the corner for 200,000 in the business. You can do it, providing you send us a proposal that show us that you understand the current situation and the current environment, how your proposed amount gonna be spent, and how your business is gonna grow in the next 2 or 3, 4, 5 years. Okay, so a business proposal with a detailed budget is very important. Okay, doesn't have to be 100 pages, as long as you can clearly demonstrate your understanding about the business you are proposing. Okay. And for any applicant, if you have any family members or dependents that you wanted to bring to Western Australia after your 188 is granted, they need to be living in Western Australia. Okay, they need to be live, or they need to, if they are working for you, whatever, or study, they have to be in Western Australia. So that's our policy. And for people who visited Western Australia in the past, who've been here before, got a connection here, whether have a family, friends, or business connection in Western Australia, will give you the preference for when selecting for state nomination. Okay, make sure you put that in your application. Okay, but if you never been here before, no connection here, don't worry. Okay, just tell us, how genuinely you wanted to come to Western Australia. Okay, why you want to pick Western Australia over other states or territories in Australia. All right, so once you qualified for this, and then for them, then you can plus you meet the residency requirement, then you can apply for the PR, which is the 888 visa. Okay, so this time we had no minimum or maximum requirements listed. Okay, so it's all up to you. You can propose the minimum as same as the Home Affairs, but as long as you can justify your proposal. Okay, research and availability of your business proposal is very important. Okay, you need to tell us why you want to do this business, what's the forecast, how you're going to spend your money. Okay, so that's very important because we want every applicant to be successful in Western Australia with the business. Okay, so it doesn't matter the amount of investment, whether it's the minimum 200,000 or proposing 800 or 1 million, it's up to you, but make sure you've done enough research and the business you're going to propose is feasible. Okay, this is very important. Again, we carried over the non-restrictive business activity policy, which means unlike other states or territories in Australia, we don't tell you what to do. Okay, you can propose any type of business. Okay, as long as they are legal, legit, can qualify you for your 888 in the future. Okay, again, important about the business proposals been mentioned here again. And also note, if you want to purchase an existing business, make sure that business has not been used by another business migrant, okay, in the past. Even though Home Affairs Department allows you to do it with a certain percentage and time. However, we will not allow any recycle business. So if you want to purchase a second, or purchase an existing business, make sure the owner that you are purchased from, he or she was not a business migrant to use that business to help them to get their PR. Okay, so that's the non-recycle policy for purchasing business. Apart from that, you can do any business you like. All right, and you can purchase any business you like as well. Just have to take note of that recycled business. Okay, if you wanted to do property development, you can still do it with the 188A, providing we just got a little condition here. You have to propose a minimum 3 dwellings for that one project. Okay, minimum 3. That's the and there's no minimum or maximum figures. Okay, it's all realistic. Depends on where you want to run the project. The cost of land is different. The cost of construction is different. So in your proposal, you need to tell us where you want to get the land from, how much to subdivide the land, how much to construct. As long as it's realistic and reasonable, we're happy to accept that. Okay, so we're not setting any minimum or maximum this time. If you want to build your own residence to form part of a project, you can do it, providing then you need to do minimum 4. Okay, so if you do a property development project, that's the requirement, and make sure you have showed your own management and ongoing business activity in your property development business. That's the Home Affairs, the federal government will check at the time of your permanent visa application at your 888. Okay, and if you run property development, you can't partner with any other party. Okay, you have to run it by yourself. Okay, minimum 3 dwellings, run it 100% yourself. Okay, manage the business and make sure the business is ongoing. Okay, that's the key points for property development. Again, you can do trading, export, and make sure majority of the goods or service that you're exporting to outside of Western Australia are actually sourced locally. So we say majority, okay? Majority means over 50%. We understand you're probably too hard to source 100%, but if you can demonstrate that majority of your product or services exported out of Western Australia are actually sourced locally, that'll be okay. All right. Again, We allow you to change your business proposal down the track, halfway, whatever, okay? However, we might reassess the whole state nomination application, okay? So you have just have to be really careful when you do your business proposal at the beginning, okay? You make sure you understand what you are preparing, okay? Even though you're allowed to change, however, there might be additional things we want you to do if you want to apply for a change. So get it in one go at the beginning, okay? All right, the next visa, which is the 188B investor visa. Again, we have no additional requirement for that, as long as you can meet the Home Affairs requirement. Put a total of $2.5 million into a compliant investment. You need to engage with a registered Australian fund manager to help you to run this, because the fund has to be compliant every year throughout the course of your the visa before you apply for the 888. All right. So what we need you to show us is that you agree to reinvest the 2.5 million, the compliant investment, back into Western Australia, okay, in any Western Australian assets upon the maturity of the compliant investment. Okay, so put the 2.5 million into compliant investment, meet the residency requirement, then you can apply for the 888, which is the PR. Okay, so both of the 188A, which is the 188 business, 188B, which is 188 investor, you need to be under 55. But if you are over 55, we can still nominate you, but you need to put application for age waiver request. Okay, we can give you the age waiver. The condition for age waiver, we set it clearly with the figure. Okay, for business innovation, you have to propose at least a total net assets of 1.5 million in Western Australia, of at least $500,000 is invested in the business, and create one full-time job. Okay, this is for business visa, 188 business visa. For 188 investor visa, you still have the 2.5 million into compliant investment, plus an additional 1.25 million in net assets in West Australia. Okay, you need to show us you have achieved these figures at a time when you apply for your 888 state nomination. Okay, and if you are short of points, okay, you need a 65 points to pass, to qualify. If you're short of points, we can also give you a 10 extra points as a special endorsement, same criteria as the age waiver, but you can only apply for one or another. Okay, you either apply for the age waiver or you apply for the special endorsement 10 points. Okay. The third visa, which is the significant investment visa, no additional requirement. Put a 5 million that you legally obtained into the compliant investment, and you agree to reinvest the 5 million upon maturity into any Western Australian assets. And that's it, meet the residency requirement. And then once the time is up for 3 years, you can apply for the 888 for the permanent resident visa. And this, as I say, this is 188C, has no age limit. Okay, so if you're over 55, that's fine. Last visa, which is the entrepreneur visa, you need to send us an email to obtain an expression of interest form to start the whole process. Okay, so if you're interested, you can send us an email at businessmigration@smallbusiness.wa.gov.au. Ask for an expression of interest form for the 188 entrepreneur visa. All right, a few hints for you. If you have family or investment in other states or of Australia, generally we don't offer you the state nomination for WA. However, you can request a review, and then we'll look at a case by case basis for your situation. Okay, and do not apply state nomination to more than one state. Otherwise, you might not get a nomination from any of them. Okay, so do your research, make sure you understand every state or territory government's requirement, and then just put your application just to the state that you really wanted to migrate to. Okay. However, if these are exceptional circumstances, let us know. Okay, we're kind enough to look at it, to review it. All right, there are some information available on the website, businessmigration.wa.gov.au. And for new migrants, the Small Business Development Corporation can offer a range of free services from the government for new startups, new migrants who wants to start a new business in Western Australia. Do jump onto the website and have a look. And then if you are physically in Perth, feel free to come to see us in the city if you've got any further questions. Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation today. I'll now hand back to the host for Q&A. Audrey, thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo. That was quite a nice detailed presentation. So I'm sure many are very eager to get to Perth soon to see how are things. And thank you, Desmond and James as well for the presentation. So everyone, we are now at our final session, which is the question and answer session. So feel free to just type in the chat box for any questions that you have. We already have a couple of questions. So Leo, can I direct this question to you?
Yes.
Okay, this is actually about 188E. So the question is, they noticed that there is no service provider as part of the requirements, and other states have mentioned this as part of the requirement for 188E. Do you mind sharing about this?
Sorry, Audrey, I didn't quite get your question.
Oh, this is for 188E.
Yeah.
Is there
entrepreneur? Is that for entrepreneur visa?
That's correct. 188 entrepreneur visa. Is there a need for a service provider? Because the other states, they noticed that other states do mention this as a requirement.
Oh, at the moment, our requirement for the entrepreneur visa is the same as the Home Affairs. Okay, we're not adding anything. So what the Home Affairs asked for, then that's the rule. But our process is slightly different. So they need to get the expression of interest form first. Okay, it's free of charge. Okay, do the EY first, and then we'll have a look, and then decide whether the applicant will be move on to the next stage or not. So to answer your question, no, they don't need a third party provider or yeah.
Thank you. All right, we're still on the topic of 188E. What is the definition of innovative for 188E visa, Leo? Do you mind sharing? How do you define innovative, basically?
Okay, it's a little bit hard to define, what is innovative. But this visa was designed for talented people who has a very interesting idea that can be commercialized in the real world. Okay, put it in short. Okay, so you have an idea that is different and never, so a new idea, completely new idea, never seen in the past, no one did it before, and it can be commercialized. Okay, I know people, many people have lots of ideas, new ideas, but it's very hard to commercialize on the ground. Okay, so you only have the idea, and for this visa, that's only the nutshell. Okay, to become an entrepreneur okay, you need to have the experience in the field of your idea. Okay, for example, if you are accountant, you say, okay, I'm really interested in hydrogen. Okay, I have an idea how to convert hydrogen into water or energy. Okay, and you are accountant. Okay, so you need to have a history of entrepreneurship activity, and you need to have the background. And your idea can be commercialized in Australia. Okay, in Australia, because it's quite different. The entrepreneur space, the startup space in Australia is quite different to any other Asian countries. Okay, so that's why we want you to send us an EOI. Okay, so tell us what exactly your background, what's your idea. Have you done any research and have you engaged with any parties in Australia, and what's their feedback? Blah blah blah. So a lot of things you need to put in that proposal. Okay, and so far I haven't seen a huge spike in that visa.
I see.
That shows again how difficult it is.
I see. Great. Is there any particular target sector for this, Leo?
No,
So it's open.
it's everything. Everything it's on the Home Affairs. Okay, so Home Affairs listed some criteria. So have a look at that.
Okay.
We'll honor what they put up. We not follow any. We will not add anything. Okay, we will honor whatever they put up. Yeah.
Sure. Right. That's clear. Thank you, Leo. Okay, the next question, perhaps Desmond, I'll direct this to you. The question is, if my spouse stays in Australia on behalf of me, can I run my business in Australia from overseas, which is the home country, to satisfy the 888A requirement? So this is conversion.
Sure.
Yeah, I think James or Desmond can answer this, because this it's more to do with the Home Affairs management.
That's correct. For Desmond,
management, yeah.
Sure, I'll take this question. Yeah, the answer is yes. And I mentioned about, this earlier. It is something that we call role swap. And that is possible. Say if your husband is the principal applicant for 188A, but then he chose or he needs to continue to stay back here in Malaysia. So the spouse who is going to be living in Australia can help to fulfill that. So a couple of things to take notes. Your spouse needs to be also a shareholder of the company in Australia. Your spouse, other than residency, meeting the one year minimum residency, your spouse need to manage the business as well. So the idea structure has always been, the husband and wife hold the interest or hold the share of the company in Australia together, which give the flexibility of either one of you to manage the business to fulfill the 888 requirement. So the answer is yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next question for James. James, for entrepreneur visa, can the whole family go together, or is it just the entrepreneur? Family inclusive of parents?
Okay, yeah, so good question. All of these visas we've talked about can include can include a family unit. So there's a main applicant who meets the primary criteria, such as the business or financial requirements. They can include members of their family unit. So that's their spouse. And Australia recognizes a spouse that they're either married to or not married to. So if you've been living in a relationship with someone, even if you're not married, they can be recognized as a de facto partner. Can include children. Now, the rule for children are that they can typically be included up to age 22, so under 23 years of age, provided as an adult, so this is 18 plus, they're still single and not working full-time and independent. So under 18, no problem. 18 to 22 can still be included, provided that they are still financially supported by the parents and they are single. So generally we'd look for people studying, but could also be if they're not studying but not yet working. So they can be included in the application and get the same visa as part of the application process. Parents can't be included, but there are pathways for parents to migrate to Australia later once their children, who are the adult applicants, are in Australia and have their permanent residency in Australia, there are pathways for them to sponsor parents. And there are a few options for that. They are a bit complex to talk about, but there are pathways there. Just note that for a sponsor to qualify as a sponsor, they must be a PR, and they must have been living in Australia for at least 2 years first before they can sponsor the parents. It doesn't have to be 2 years as a PR, but it can be time on the temporary visa, but they do need to have been staying in Australia for at least 2 years first before they can sponsor the parents, as well as holding a permanent visa.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Next question, Leo. This is for you. There's a slight clarification on your presentation slides. The question is, what if I have a family member in another state? Will it affect my application into WA, and what is the rationale?
Okay, that's from Marco Ong. Okay,
yes,
thank you for
that's correct.
the question. The rationale behind this is maybe I didn't clarify. Okay, family member, we are referring to immediate family members. Okay, but so for example, if you have for example, your spouse is in Sydney and then you want to come to Western Australia for state nomination, or your son is studying in Melbourne and you want to apply Queensland's nomination. Okay, so you need to let us know. You need to disclose, and then give us a valid reason. That's it. But if you say my cousin is in New South Wales, or that's fine. Okay, it's so the family member here refer to immediate family member. Okay, you say I got a long distance cousin in Melbourne, but that's fine. Okay, that's fine. But if you say okay, my son or my wife, or they in my wife's it's in Melbourne, but I want to come to Western Australia. Then obviously, you need to let us know, and then why you want to do that. It's not just Western Australia. Okay, every state will look at these things carefully. Because there were many past precedents that it's not really a good way, for some of not really fair for some of the state or territories. Okay, so if you have a strong connection in that city, in that state, go for that state. Okay, if you try to bypass or try to pick the easy one and then as a jumping board or stepping stone to another state, you get caught. Okay, you get caught. So follow your heart. Okay, so if you happen to be in that situation, just let us know and then explain the reason. Maybe you say, okay, my son's studying in Sydney, but then he's not really like it. He told me, Mom, I want to go to Perth. And then you apply to state nomination for Perth. Okay, so tell us why. Okay, a valid reason, and we'll consider that. So it's not a definitely no or refusal. Okay, we just wanted you to tell us, okay, what exactly happened. Okay, so don't worry too much. Okay, but if you have a long distance cousin or auntie, whatever in other state, that's fine. That happened a lot with our Malaysian and Singaporean applicants. They all have relatives all over the world anyway. Yeah.
And thanks, Leo. That clarifies very well. Okay, James, so you mentioned about the 2.5, which has to come for a business or investment activity. What investments can be used?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mentioned that there are restrictions around where the money can come from for the 2.5 million, as opposed to the 5 million, which doesn't have those restrictions. We have a term called eligible investments, and eligible investments restricts the types of investments that can be used to show where that 2.5 million has come from. Now, those investments include investment in business. It does include investment in property. It includes investment in gold and silver bullion. It includes shares. It can, in some cases, include managed funds as well. So it's these types of investments that can be considered. Newer investments like Bitcoin, unfortunately, cannot be considered as an eligible investment, or other forms of investment that aren't aren't specified under this definition, they cannot be used. So the main ones people will be interested in would be the property. Property can be used, both capital gain and rental returns for property, both commercial and residential. Shares can also be used. So that would probably be the main ones that people would be concerned with, as well as business investments as well.
Sure. Thank you. I think the next question you can also carry on, James. Any paper qualifications such as English language needed to apply for the visa or the PR?
Yeah, only one stream has a mandatory English requirement, and that's the entrepreneur stream. And that requires what we call competent English, which is, if you're familiar with IELTS, which is graded from 0 up to 9, it's an IELTS of 6. So a score of IELTS of 6 that would be required for that. And you can't substitute paper qualifications for that. This, I think, is a little bit unfair, but you do get exempted from that competent English requirement if you've got a passport from the UK, US, Ireland, and I think that's it, right? But those
English-speaking countries, yeah.
Well, there's other English-speaking countries as well, but Malaysia speaks English. Singapore speaks English, but I think it's unfair. But anyway, that are the rules. But aside from that, then yes, even for the competent English, you've got to do the test. For the other streams, there is no hard English requirement. But if you don't have what we call functional English, which is equivalent to 4.5 on the IELTS, or it can include study in English at both school or university or institutions. Then if you don't have that, then there is an additional fee that gets charged by the government. So with no English, you can get through the process except for the entrepreneur visa. So only entrepreneur has a mandatory English requirement. The other streams, we want to show English to avoid extra charges, but ultimately if you don't have English, you can still get through.
Okay, great. Next question, Desmond, could you take this, please? It is about how much of time do you have? Does one have before they move to Australia after the visa being granted?
All right. Sure. So it varies a little bit depending on which visa, which 188 you're applying through. So for example, if it is 188A, the requirement is to run the business for 2 years. So you could relatively have up to another 3 years before you need to move over to Australia from the visa granted dates. And for investor visa, 188B, you need to fulfill only 2 years out of the 5 years. So you could basically travel in between Australia and your home country so long you fulfill 730 days over the 5 years. For 188C, you just have to fulfill 40 days per year, depending on how soon you convert or apply for the PR. So if you were to apply for the PR right after third year, then you're spending 120 days over the first 3 years. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Sure. Desmond, can you continue on the next question? This is back to the role swap. Okay. So it said that you've mentioned earlier that also to apply for a property development business activity, it's possible to apply for a property development business activity. So it is said that the applicant cannot undertake a business activity in partnership with any other party.
Okay.
Sorry.
Your wife is not other party. Okay, your wife or your husband. Okay, any other party means any third. We should put any third party. Any third party. So, for example, you joint venture with another business partner. Okay, because we only require 3 dwellings. So, with that kind of size scale of the project, it's impossible to get a partnership because it's too small. But if you're doing, say, 15 apartments or 20 townhouses, then again, it's another situation. You can let us know and seek for permission. So basically, but again, your wife is not third party, so you can do the role swap. Make sure you stick to the management. Whoever is managing, whoever is in West Australia, they need to manage and also appear on the share own the share of the qualify the share of the company, etc. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Leo. James, just now you were mentioning about bullions and whether you can add jewelry. Is jewelry which they wear is acceptable, or only gold biscuits that can be counted? You're muted.
Yeah, gold biscuits. I haven't heard that term before. Gold ingots, I guess.
It actually does. Yeah. Go.
I'd love to have some gold biscuits. Look, to be honest, and I know policy really well because I teach visas. I don't know if there's any exclusion specifically around that in policy. So it's a good question because I know policy very, very well, and I don't recall if there's any specifically on that. But the point I want to make here is we're talking about gains from the investment. It's not holding it. It's not just holding it. You've got to be making gains from it. So if you just buy some jewelry and the jewelry is worth a certain amount of money and it's still the same price later, you haven't earned anything from that jewelry. So when we're talking about the gold and silver bullion, and I think the key word here is bullion. So I expect it would have to be ingots and actual trading in those precious metals. But the point is you've got to earn the money from the silver or gold. So if it's just static, if it's not changing much, then you're not going to be earning anything from it. So there's no significance. There's not just holding the money in it. You've got to be actually generating money through the trading and through the activities around that. So that would be my answer. I don't think there'd be a situation where you could really realistically use the jewelry. In terms of showing assets, you could, but in terms of qualifying as an eligible investment, unless it's gone up significantly in price and you can show that you're actually using it as a form of investment and there are gains being made from it, then I wouldn't expect you could.
Okay. Thank you, James. Leo, another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is the business asset sum of 300K still applicable for WA, or you're following the federal requirements of 200K at this point?
Well, we don't. I mean, this time we follow the Home Affairs, the federal requirement. As I mentioned in the presentation, there's no minimum or maximum you can propose. Okay, so as long as you qualify for the federal one, for the federal requirement, 2.3. Remember, it's a 2.3. Okay, then you can propose anything. Okay. So the business proposal and the budget is very important. Even you propose very basic 200,000K in business, you need to demonstrate to us how you're going to spend the money to start your business or to purchase any existing one. What's your forecast for the business? How you can meet that 200,000 net assets at the time of your 888. Okay, how you can generate the proposed employee number, okay, the employment at the time of your 888, because if you want to retain enough employees, create an employee and retain them, you need to have a certain turnover, a certain assets in the business to make sure understand Australian law in terms of salary and wages. You can't say only the holding cost for 2 employees is only 50,000 a year, which is it's not feasible. Okay, so you need to be able to hold 2 full-time employees. What's your turnover going to be? Okay, so that's the information we want to see. Okay, you really understand how to run business and how the current business environment is like in Western Australia.
Thank you. Back to the 188E, Leo, I need to ask this. Would setting up a badminton center be considered for a 188E?
Entrepreneur?
No. Yes.
Use your common sense, I think. Common sense prevails.
Yes.
It's very common sense prevails. I tell you, I've seen proposals like I want to set up a renewable hardware store. My major competitor is Bunnings. Okay, Bunnings Warehouse. Okay, Bunnings Warehouse. Yeah, Bunnings Warehouse is the largest hardware store in Australia. It's going to compete with Bunnings. Import hardwares. Was that what? Just go for 188A.
Yeah.
But sorry, I don't qualify for that. You know.
Sure.
You know, so
Okay.
sometimes, you know, common sense prevails. If you think about the idea, is that, oh, you know, is that innovative? Okay, you say you want to set up a electric car servicing, you know, with hydrogen, you know, all these kind of technology. Maybe, you know, that's the future. Renewable energy, carbon neutral. That's for the future. Okay, something like that, you know. But again, I'm not an expert, you know, so.
Sure. Thank you. All right, let me see if there's any more questions that are left out. Let's see. Okay, there's one more. James, again, back to the jewelry. So 7 years ago, I purchased the gold jewelry of 30,000, and now after 8 years, the value of the gold jewelry is 90,000 according to the valuer, right? So the 60,000 is gained within 7 years. So what is the amount I should add in net worth?
Well, keep in mind, we're looking at 2.5 million that has to be gained in total. So, you know, even if you've got 60,000 that's accepted through this, you've still got a long way to go for 2.5 million. But I think for that kind of query, send us an email, send us details through the email. Email's on the screen. I'm happy to come back to you, and I'll check the specific policy, internal policy around that. And I just, on that topic, one of the things that we have as migration agents, we have access to the internal procedures and policies that the department officers use to assess cases. And that's one of the reasons our success rates are so high. When we're actually looking and determining if someone's eligible, it's not just the public information that you can see. We're also going through the legislation, but more importantly, we're going through the actual internal policies and procedures that the actual officers use to assess cases. So we can give very definitive answers as to eligibility and confirming people can meet the requirements. So send us an email, and I can actually look at that and consult policy and check on the suitability. But keep in mind, it's 2.5 million we need to be demonstrated as being earned.
Okay. All right. So Leo, there's a question specifically for you regarding RRB renewal. Perhaps I can just answer this. It's about whether WA has a special scheme for RRB renewal. But
yeah, we don't deal with RRV, unfortunately. Yeah.
Federal level, by the way. So
yeah.
So,
although the processing team is in Western Australia, but it's a federal team.
Yeah, it's about 5 minutes away from where I'm sitting at the moment. Yeah.
So the answer is no.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've actually come to the end of the question and answer session. So most importantly, for further questions, for further clarifications, please feel free to get in touch with us for a private consultation. We're happy to meet you all and clarify further. The number is on the screen. And before we end the session, Leo, can I invite you to just have your last words? I mean, before we end the session?
Oh yeah. I mean, thank you very much for your time here. I mean, really, I mean, it's good to share some of the policies, informations about Western Australia on this platform. But again, I sincerely hope sometime next year we can travel again. We can see each other on the ground, whether it's in Malaysia or Singapore or in Australia, Western Australia. Stay safe for this coming festival season, Christmas, New Year, and Chinese New Year. Okay, it's not far away. Okay, yeah, good luck with everything, and you know, any issues, send me an email. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leo. James, from your side, anything?
No, I think if anyone's interested, they should talk to us. As we've discussed, there's a lot of complexities to these, as indicated with some of the questions, and we'll do our research around that. We are very experienced, and we have access to a lot of information to confirm people's eligibility. And I guess the general advice I give to everyone is, if you do want to migrate, earlier is always better than later, because generally changes happen. I mean, look, although it's not migration, the whole COVID-19 situation, things do change. Immigration requirements do change, and generally immigration requirements become more difficult over time. not less difficult, because there's more and more competition for a limited number of places.
Okay, last but not least, Desmond, and you can wrap up the session.
Well, first, again, Leo, thank you so much for your time again. And yeah, my words is just the same as what Jim had just said. We are really, here to assist you. If you have any specific question, you're not certain whether you meet the requirement or not, do talk to us. We have a fantastic model where we basically assess our clients before we take them on board. We want to be certain that all our clients meet the visa requirements first. Go through the detailed assessment with us. We guide you through, we check your documentation, and until we are certain that you fulfill all the criteria and requirement, then we'll take you on board. We have seen clients, especially despite the pandemics, plan and move on with the plans. Do take notes, the processing time doesn't come instantly. It takes time for you to get the approval. Yet, after the approval, it does give you some time to plan before you need to be in Australia. Yeah, so this is a long process. We are here to guide you through, carry your hand through before the application until you and your family have landed in Australia. So we will continue to carry your hand through until you have done your full settlement and got your PR. Yeah, we are here for you basically. All right, thank you again, everybody, and stay safe. And hope that this new virus doesn't put us back to the lockdown again after so long. And we are just coming out from there. And I hope that it doesn't come, we don't go back to how we used to be locked down again. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. See you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.